Hello there, Power App enthusiasts. Welcome to the Power App tutorial channel, your go-to spot for mastering all things Power App and Power Automate. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're new here and ring the notification bell so you can remain updated when we come up with new videos. All right, let's get into it. We have the goal today is we're trying to import multiple data set from an email into our Excel workbook. And we have a sample email on the right, which has a subject heading called Check Email Multi, a couple of introduction, hello John, and then the important parts, which is the name field, the phone number field, the date of birth, and the address. And we need to populate all three data sets into our Excel workbook on the left. Now, our Excel workbook is stored in OneDrive. And I'm just going to do a test run because the flow is currently running. So I'm just going to do a test run on this flow so we can populate the data. That's going to take a while to run. So we might have to come back to it. But in the meantime, let's just discuss how we're going to build this flow. We know we need a connector. We need an email connector. So let's see, starting from here. We're going to use email to Excel. It's picking Gmail. Let's try another different one. Here we go. We need Outlook email to Excel. This looks good. Let's just continue from here. Now, if you haven't connected your connectors, it's going to ask you to connect them, but mine is already connected, so it just picked it automatically. So if you haven't done that, just go ahead and do that, and then hit Create Flow next. Okay, wow. So while that's going on, let's check on our flow and see what we have. All right, so we have our data sets imported in, and it looks good so far. Let's just go ahead and continue building our flow. In the meantime, I'm just going to delete this, and then we're going to create a new data set. And all right, I'm going to as well, I'm going to turn off the other flow so it doesn't drag the system. Okay, now that that flow has been turned off, let's go ahead and continue building our new flow. So we're checking to see when an email arrives, and remember from the email, our email said check multi. Let me use a forward to make sure we can. So email should say check email multi. I'm just going to copy that for the subject line. So go to the subject line, and I'm going to paste that in there. So anytime an email comes in that says check email multi, that's what we're looking for. And then we add the tables. So before we do that, let's open this down so we can see our values. I'm just going to set up the test email we're going to use for the next one. But before we do the adding to the rows, we need to get our fields. So we need a name field, a date of birth field, a phone, a date of birth, and an address. Let's start with the name first. And for this, we use the initiate variable, initialize variable. Just put in the name. I'm just going to label this name. And we know it's a string, so we're going to put that as a string. And I'm just gonna copy this guy and paste him. But before we do all that, I'm gonna remove this guy for now because we need to do some work before we get to bring him out later. But for now, let's just. So the next one should be phone. That's also a string. So now that we have this, we have our email to Excel, we have our email. When an email arrives, name, phone number. I'm just gonna save this first so we can make sure our flow is starting to get some headway. Gonna save that first and then we'll continue. Let's continue with our flow. Another variable for the date of birth. And another variable for our address. Okay, so we have our 4 variables that we need to pick out: the name, phone number, date of birth, and the address. And so, but because if we were just picking like one item, this would be fine. But because we are going to try and pick out multiple variables, we need another set of data. And I'm just going to continue with the action here, copy and paste. But this time around, instead of name, we're looking at names. We're trying to get the names. And for this, we need an array of names. So we need an array of names. I'm going to copy this guy and duplicate him 3 more times. And this would be an array of phones. Continuing with date of births. Date of births. I'm just going to leave that. Let's give it a small s, but without the push. And then the last one. Okay, awesome. So we have our name variable, we have our name, we have our date of birth, and then we have our names, phones, date of birth, and addresses. And now that we've got all that and what we need to do, let's just save this real quick. And next thing we're gonna do is gonna add one more action, but this action is gonna be a compose. And we're gonna use this compose action to grab the body of our email. Let's grab the body of our email. I'm just gonna label this body. And then one more action. This is gonna be a HTML to text. So there are different ways to build this, but this is what I find that's it's cleaner, straightforward. Anybody can understand this by just following the flow. So and then so HTML to text is gonna grab our body, the output from a body. And then finally, this is where we're gonna clean up both the body and let's add, let me just copy this guy here because we need another compose. But this time around, this is gonna be our body array. All right, so for the body array, we need a formula for this, and we're gonna use the split function. And this split function is gonna take our HTML to text, and we're gonna split it with a comma. And just save that. And let's just save this flow right now. All right, so let's just do like a recap on what's going on. Let me reduce this. So when an email comes in, first of all, we initialize the name, phone, date of birth, and the address variables. And then we initialize an array of names, an array of phone numbers, an array of date of birth and addresses. And then we take the body of the email, and then we convert that body into HTML to text. And then we convert the HTML to text into an array. All right, so let's just test this flow and see where we get so far. It's going to be a manual test because it's the first time it's been run. Let's see. Okay. All right, so it says checking my multi, everything looks good. Hit send. Okay. Let's go back to our flow and see what's going on. It might take a while, but it shouldn't take that long. Well, in the meantime, while that's going on, let's do some edits. I know I want my flow to look like this. Check email multi. So this is just in case someone tries to use our flow in the future. It can be like, oh yeah, here's a sample of the flow. Let's see if our flow has been run. Okay, so we have a successful flow run. Let's see what we got. So based on the data, everything runs successfully. Let's see the results of the body array. So for the body array, we have it in a cool, nice format. As you can see, when it comes in the body, it still looks messed up. The HTML kind of cleans it out a little bit, and then we use the array to like separate it. So now we have hello John in a different format. We have name, we have phone number. Everything looks a little bit cleaner. And now we have to just get out our data. And this is the fun part. So going back to our flow, the next thing we need to do is, I'm just going to reduce Copilot here so we can have more room. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an action, a control. I want to make sure that for every email that comes in, anytime the email comes in, it should do certain things. So for each email, the first thing it needs to do, it needs to check a condition. So we'll go back to control again, pick our condition. So for the email, And we're going to, so they apply to each uses an array. And we already have an array here, which is our body array. So just attach that here. So for each body array, we have a condition. And the condition is pretty simple. To get each item in an array, you just need to type in the item. And that's as simple as that. Now, what I found out is that it's as long as what I'm looking for is in between the two curly braces of the array, we should find it. So I always try to go as broad as possible and say, okay, if anything in my two curly braces contain the word's name, grab that. That's what I'm looking for. So it checks that condition and makes sure if it contains the word name, let's just put a condition here, label it find names. Here we go. And then the first condition, if it does find a name, what we need to do is we need to set variable. All right, so we set the variable, and the first one is going to be a name. And we're just going to use a formula, last, and then split. And then we need to grab each item again. And then for each item that we grab, all I need to do is find the name again. But this time around, I'm going to put a space in it since I know my original email had a space after the name. So, and I know I'm trying to get the elements after the name and the space. If I don't add that space in there, it's going to grab the space every time we try to add it to Excel, and I'm trying to avoid that. So I add that space in there, and then you just click add, and that's it. And that will grab the name. But we're also trying to grab the, let's go back to variable again. So we also trying to grab all the names. So for that, we need a different kind of append to array variable. And here we grab the names. And all I have to do is just grab, since we already set the variable for name up there, I'm just going to grab that variable, which is the name variable, and put it in here. So every time we run this, put labels here. I always try to label so I know what's going on. Set variable name, or whoever comes in can know what's going on. So if you come in here, you get the name, and then also grab the names while you're doing that. And then just for, let's add a compose here. It says awesome. So if we don't find a name, we say no names found. Okay, so let's do another recap. So when we get the array body, for each array body, it checks the condition and makes sure if it finds a name, if it's true, it's going to grab the name and set the variable to name, and then add the variables. Each name that's found is going to be added to the appended to the names. I think we should be good. Let's save this and do a quick test run and see what we get. Since we're around the flow, we're just going to use the automatic test flow. Okay. It shouldn't take so long. Okay, so for the first one, and I'm assuming the first one should be Hello John, so it shouldn't find it in Hello John. But for the next one, we have name, and it seems to have found it. Let's see what we got on the names. It found Kim Magenta without the spaces in the front, and then it's been added to the array. And for each and every appendage, every time it finds it, as you can see, it adds it to the array. Okay, so that looks good. That looks like it's working fine. If it finds John Smith, it adds it to the array. Let's go back to our edits. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch from the new designer to the old designer. And there's a reason for that. It just makes it easier when you're trying to copy from the clipboard. I'll show you what I mean by that. For some of you who already know what I'm about to do, you can go ahead and do it. So for here, we go to the apply to each, and this is the condition we just built the condition. I'm just going to do copy to clipboard. And what happens is that once you copy that to the clipboard, you can add an action. And I know I need to do this 3 more times. So it needs to find the phone. One more. It needs to find the date of birth. Last but not least, it needs to find the address. So now that we have all 4, I'm going to switch back to the new designer. Save and switch. I kind of prefer the new designer because it makes it easier to label. If you're using the old designer, it's usually have to like click and edit into it before you can change labels. It just makes it easier when you use the new logo. Okay, so we have first one, the condition for names. So then this should be for phones. Find phones. If the current item contains phone, this is phone. So if it contains phone, you need to collect the phone variable, switch this to phone and updates, and the same thing for the phones. Just change this variable to make sure you don't pick the phones because that's for multi. So add that in there. Labels. Let's put on our list. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for date of birth and address. And I'm just going to pause so you don't have to watch me do the same thing, but it's exactly the same thing. And I'll get back to you when I'm done. Okay, I'm back. So I did the same thing for the date of birth. It's just if item contains date of birth, when you set the variable, make sure you pick the variable. And when you set it to this, make sure you click update. If you don't click update, it's not going to know. And then the same thing for no data bed found. And I did the same thing for address. Set the variable. Make sure you change the name. Make sure you use address and you hit update. And then change this. Make sure they're both aligned to addresses and address append to arrays. And I know address found. All right, so we should be looking good. Let's save this real quick. And before we do one more test run, I'm gonna just add one more compose here at the bottom. And I'm just gonna label this final results. And put here, dynamically put in the names, dynamically put in the phone number, date of birth, and addresses. Yeah. Put them on their online. Okay, save this flow and test it. Thank you. That looks good. If we can get this done and it comes out correct, it's a smooth sailing. We just have to finalize the adding it to Excel, and then we should be done. All right, so it shouldn't take so long. It's still running. It's checking everything, making sure it finds all the names, finds all the addresses, and let's see what we got. So the final result, we have Kim, John, Emily. We have the names. I believe they should be aligned correctly. Let's just look at the data here. I want to open it forward so we can see it clearer. Okay, so you have Kim, the number aligns, the date aligns, and the addresses aligns. I think John, the same thing with John. 1, 2, 3. Emily, the same thing with Emily. Everything looks good. All right. So now that we've done this, we've gotten our data. We just need to add this to the Excel workbook. And that's the easy part. So to add this to Excel workbook, just add a new action. I'm going to use Excel for online. Add a row into a table is what we need. Now we just need to find our table. OneDrive for business. OneDrive. The name of my email of my workbook is check email. I know I need table 1. There's only one table there. All right, so show the values. We give us everything we have in our email. We have name, phone number, date of birth, and address. Usually I like to leave my date formats as ISO 8601. If you don't know why you need to do that, you can check on Microsoft.com, but it just helps with transferring date columns to Excel. All right, so here is where we need to get our data from. So we know we have an array that has 3 names, three phone numbers and three addresses, and we're trying to get those data from the array. For the names array, the first array dynamically for all names is called names array, but we need to get the first element. So I'm just going to use 0 to get the first element out of the array. And then I'm going to label this guy that's 0. For the phone, we need dynamically get the phones. The first value for the phone is going to be 0. For the date of birth, same thing. And then dynamically grab the first element. Addresses, dynamically grab the first element. So now we have the first elements in the table. I'm just going to copy this guy and paste this 2 more times. For the second guy, we need the second element. So I'm just going to modify this. Make sure you hit update. Awesome. And then the last guy, this is going to be our final element in the table. And that should be 2. Like I said, make sure you hit update because I've seen a lot of people rush into it and they forget to hit update. And then they do the test and they have just weird results. All right, so we have our table all set up. We got the first element, second and third element saved to each row on the table. Let's save this and take a look at our workbook again. As you can see, our workbook is empty because we cleaned it out after the last run. And I'm just gonna test this flow real quick. And we should have our data populates real time in a few minutes. Let's see. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Okay. See what I mean by you need to make sure that you're putting in the right element. Let's go back to our flow. Even though I did hit updates all 3 times, it's still, let's go back to our flow. It's grabbing the same names twice. At this point, I think it was just Microsoft being slow. Guys, you gotta realize everything we're doing here is happening in the cloud. So even though it would be nice for Microsoft to just work on demand, it doesn't really work like that. Okay, it's saving. Here we go. So this time it's in the old form. I don't know why, but we can still work with this. Here we go. Here's the problem right here. It didn't updates. So I'm just gonna use it save updates. updates. Yeah, but like I said, just make sure that this gets updated. If not, you get weird results as you just saw. And then let's check this one. It's probably going to be the same thing. Especially when you're copying and pasting actions. I sometimes think to myself, sometimes our brain is faster than the computer. The number one thing that was drilled down during my days as a computer science student was you have to slow your brain down to understand so that the computer can keep pace with you. Okay, let's just save this real quick. And before I test it this time, I'll make sure that it actually did save and updated to the right. Okay, so it looks good. This looks, wow. Hmm. Well, some of them updated and some of them didn't. So we got one, 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 one. What's here? Zero, zero, two. Power up is really, really slow today. This looks good. And this looks good. All right. All right. Let's do one more test. But save first. One last test. Now, by now, you guys should have already completed this. This is just what happens when you run things live. But I'm just making sure that my flow works correctly. And this time around, I should get new data, but with the different fields. Okay, so Rakim, we have John, and we have Emily. Okay, now we have the right data. And that is how you import email from data from email to Excel. Just make sure that at the end of the day, when you're done with your flow, you turn it off. And thank you for joining us today. Feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We are new, so we need all the help we can get to grow. Thank you once again for joining us. This is Power Ultimate and Power App in action. Goodbye.